Ja na początku bardzo chciałem podziękować siostrom, w szczególności siostrze Manueli za zaproszenie.
I would like to thank the organizers. I would like to thank all of the sisters, especially Sister Emanuela, for her invitation, because this shows the trust in me. Trust is very important in my life, and Faustina trusted God immensely. I also trust God, but it's also very important to have trust in our everyday life. Trusting another person, trusting at work, trusting people in the community. From sisters, and I received a leaflet about trusting in business. Life is about trust, and business is about trust. And I knew about it, but even in psychology, we talk about the flash, that something happens and it reaches your heart. And as I run my business today, trust is most important. That when you have the trust, everything comes. What's most important is to trust and build a relationship with another human being. That relationship that is based on trust. My name is Artur Janus. I come from Warsaw. I have always lived in Warsaw. My family has lived there for generations, but I also love Krakow. I love Łagiewniki. And sisters say that this is also the place of the first love, where everything started. And for me, this is also the site of the first love. And this is what Archbishop Ryś mentioned on the first day of the Congress, that you reverse the order and everything changes. For me, such places are important and I pay a lot of attention to them. But Walendów is also an important place for Faustina. This is where she was in 32 and 36. And I'm extremely happy that I will be able to live there. So I run a company. We renovate marbles, granites in banks, also in churches and sacred objects as well. But I also run a wholesalers center. A few weeks before the pandemic, we opened a new wholesalers center on the store, and we know what it was like at the beginning of the pandemic. And I didn't know what to do. And Faustina kept following me and her voice, trust, trust, trust. And so, just to give you an example, there was no official opening of that store, and a car comes to the store with Lithuanian number plates. There is a very thin person coming. There is a priest who came and he says, God bless, I have come from Vilnius, from Sister Faustina. And he came. We looked at the watch, it was 3 o'clock, and he said, well, I have come from Vilnius because you have run a service in Vilnius a few years ago, and it really was amazing that I can see it, that Faustina is with me everywhere I go, in my store, in my business, at home. She is in my heart. And as I speak about my hometown, Warsaw, the same way in my heart there's a place for Jesus and for Sister Faustina. So this guy wearing a Roman collar who came from Lithuania, from Vilnius, from Faustina, was really a sign for me. So in my life, I have experienced a lot of evil. I now help people who are addicted to various substances. I help them with the therapy of 12 steps. As I have mentioned, I have been a member of Faustinum for 3 years. I come from a family where my parents divorced when I was 13. So I did not have a holistic family. my mum was overprotective. She was trying to really compensate for me not having a father. I have no bond with my father. We are on the phone on birthday, name day, Christmas. But it's very difficult to build something when you don't build a relationship. But I do not hold a grudge against him. There's no resentment because he gave me what he gave me, and I cannot influence that in any way. At the age of about 16, 17, alcohol entered my life. I started drinking. I had, certain friends and company. I had a girlfriend. There were different issues that happened. There was no place for God. There was no place for Holy Sacraments. And so I was drawn by this, now I say bad way of living, but now I can see that it was God's plan for me to go through all of this, to be able to now serve people who are now in the same or an even more difficult situation. As I have mentioned, it was my mum who brought me up, and it wasn't easy for her because I wasn't an easy child, especially at that time. And also, the entire blame for my lack of success and what was going wrong in my life, I put on my mom, that it was her fault, that I didn't have a full family. At the time, I was not taking responsibility for my life upon myself. I was unable to do it at the same time. I was blaming everyone around for that. Today, I am extremely grateful to God, to Sister Faustina, but also to my mom for this beautiful time. Because even though God was present in my life, I did not live with God, but He was preparing me for this great work, important task. It so happened in my life that I got married, one of the first concordate ceremonies in Poland. I have a son who is already 22 years old, but that happened. I was practically bringing my son up by myself. And the time that I was cursing that it was only my mum who brought me up by herself, it was my mum who showed me how to express love, how to show love and affection, how to support your children. And of course, we all praise our children that they are absolutely wonderful and they are the best. Damian, I'm not going to tell you what a wonderful man he is, but just looking at how he approaches other people, how he deals with them, how much empathy and love he has and shows, I am moved by that. And I am moved at the moment because it touches my heart. I am grateful to God that at the age of 16, 17, 18, 19, as it was at the time, God was already preparing me for this great task. I will always be Damian's father and will always be there for him. And it's not about me directing him and his life, but it was always my wish for him to know that I am there, that in every difficult moment he will be able to turn to me for help, and I will help him in as much as I can. And this is how we try to function in love, in full trust. He now is a student of the third year at the university, and this new department in my store, the wholesalers, is what he runs. This is what I joked that Faustina wished to have, but he is really managing a lot. He's studying, but I can see that I wouldn't be able to manage everything, and I can see that he is doing extremely well. So I am really happy to have such a personal relationship and a professional relationship with my son. It was a very difficult period of time for me. My son was 6 when my wife left us, and she didn't leave for another man. She left us to look after her mum, who was an alcoholic. And it's not that she left me, but she left for her mum, she left us, she left her own son. We are not really in touch. We get postcards sometimes. We know that she's abroad. I know that there's going to be a difficult situation for my son to build a relationship and build a family as an adult, but we have a lot of tools to deal with it. I remember a moment when he was 6 years old. I ran my business activity, and my wife, was dealing with the house, and I ran the company. So we divided the tasks. So when my wife left, my mum started helping us, and she was really involved in that. I had to introduce a lot of changes in my life, in my work. There was a period of time that I recall very well, but every time there was something bad happening in my life, I would escape to the mountains. And it is still is the case that this was the place where I felt closest to God. Now I know that the place where God is closest, and when I am on my knees, and I use that as well. But I recall many different difficult situations in my life. So I took my son to the mountains. We wanted to take a cable car to Kasprowy Wierch. It was really, really cold. It was like -13, and we were walking to the cable car to the station, and it was so cold we were crying, and our tears were freezing on our cheeks, and I was not sure how to proceed. But it was such a moment that I finally fell to my knees, and I was able to ask him in humility. And after that period of time when I abused alcohol and substances, and I put it aside because there was no joy in my life. Now I know that there was no joy because God was not in the first place. That meant that nothing was in its place. So at that time, I fell to my knees and I prayed, God, help me. I do not want to live like this any longer. I asked him to direct me, to show me what to do, how to live. There were miracles that started happening. There were people who were sent my way. And now I know that God comes to us through another human being, that I know I have something to give to others, I have things to receive. And I know now that I receive such gifts every day from God, but sometimes it takes time for me to get them, to understand them. So I started meeting people, encountering people who directed me. I started retreats, workshops, working on my spirituality. My development is a combination of spirituality and psychology. In Zakroczym, I am involved in a center for people who are drug addicts, who are alcoholics. So we have conferences and meetings, we give witness. Anon women. These are people who are wives and daughters and women who also are living with alcoholics. We also have DDA. These are adult children of alcoholics. I also come from a dysfunctional family. There was no alcohol in my home, but the upbringing was not exactly the way it usually would be. But we also lived in the times when alcohol was available freely, a lot of it was consumed, and it shows up in relationships. It shows up in different situations. So this is also where people who are adult children of alcoholics, aka live with. Something that was a great discovery, and this is the program that I got to know and I implement now, is the 12 steps for Christians. The first moment was when I fell to my knees and I said, God, please save me. That is my first step. And I said, God, I am helpless. Please take course of my life. The second step, when I recognized that there is a force that is stronger than I am. And thirdly, in this treatment, I gave up my life and my will to God, as well as everything that I have. With the third step, I learned what it means to trust, to entrust with God. And then the fourth step was is when I took a close look at my entire life with my conscience. I could see how I had hurt my family members and also bystanders. The fifth step is that I admitted to God, to myself, and to other human beings the exact nature of my wrongs. I went to confession, just like we heard yesterday, Halina, that it took time, and just the preparation for that confession, that I was able to do that I was able to prepare for it. Many conversations with my spiritual director. I knocked on his door and he said, just sit down. And I was very surprised that it wasn't at the confessionals. We sat opposite each other, and my confession took 3 years, 3 hours, 3 hours. And it was a conversation. After we finished, he said, come to me and kneel down. So I knelt down. He placed his hands on my head and I can feel it. There was so much warmth that entered and flew through my body. It was really amazing. I felt extreme relief. And I would like to go back to something that when I was at the step of entrusting everything in God, how am I supposed to trust God? How am I supposed to do it? How am I supposed to go about in my life with God? And told me that in order to be friends with someone, you need to spend time with them. You need to get to know them. He pointed out a few books that I could read, but the first thing that I actually took into my hands was the diary of Sister Faustina. Then there was Krakow. I do a lot of renovation work in Krakow, in Zakopane as well. And each time I traveled through Krakow, I would come here to the convent chapel, and for some reason there was always this stretch of 3 hours, and at the time I spent 3 hours there again. So this was another stage of the spirituality, that everything started changing. And now I know that I am here in this world not just for myself. I have come here to come and serve and love another human being. That the other person who is suffering needs me as well. The fact that there was alcohol in my life at an early age and that I come from a dysfunctional family, I have not gone through any therapy, but we also talk about the deepened personal development program, because people were telling me, do everything for yourself. It was very difficult for me to grasp, because for me it was connected with egoism. The same people are telling me now, okay, now the time has come for you to leave yourself. Now go and help others, be there for others. And so now I understand that my entire life, that my mom was a single mom, that then I was a single father bringing my son up by myself, that there was a time that there was no God in my life. I look at others differently. I identify myself with them. So as Archbishop Luis was saying, it's not about just taking money out and giving the money. As Sister Emanuela said, come closer, talk, give your attention. And indifference is the worst thing, because our attention can do so much. And it's not about great things and great works that we need to give that person food or shelter. We can simply show that I organize meetings where we have the 12 steps. And for example, in Gdynia, we have workshops. We run them for 3.5 months. And so on Saturday, I go to Tri-City, I ran workshops for 3 hours, and then in the evening I come back to Warsaw, because I hear that there are lots of different things. Because some people say, oh, it's gambling. Well, what is addiction to begin with? Addiction can be an alcohol, it can be a substance that activates it all. But addiction means that we do not manage to cope with our emotions, with fear, with anxiety, and at some point we discover alcohol or another substance that brings an ease. For example, I myself am a person that when something is happening in my life, I start eating. It's a compulsive reaction. When something happens, I will look for the fridge, I will look for sweets. It is not normal, because normal people just go about these emotions in a normal way. This is a disorder, it's an illness, it's alcohol, drugs, gambling. There are people who regulate their emotions with sex, anonymous sex addicts. And this is also addiction with computer. Young people are spending 12 hours per day at night as well, that they spend 3 days without leaving the computer, not even going to the toilet, because they are playing games. And I know about my son that children don't really listen to us. Children watch us, they copy us, they see what kind of human beings we are. Just like me. Why at the age of 18, 19, I started looking for something else, because I didn't get it at home. I didn't get the warmth, I didn't get the love. There were no borders that were set for me. I entered adulthood, my adult life, because I didn't have any borders set. I would cross borders of other people. I would also get my borders trampled upon. Now, when a storm is coming, I explain to my son we need to close the windows because something is about to happen. So there are certain limits, there are borders. How was I supposed to build a healthy relationship or any relationship if I didn't set the borders and I didn't keep my borders? So how to be assertive, how to build a relationship, these were the things I did not know. Now I know that God loves me the way I am, with all of my vices. But really, in order to get to know other people, to get to know God, I had to love myself first. My self-esteem when I left home was really low. There was plenty of anxiety, expectations, and I was looking for people to like me, to approve of me, to be accepted. And many things did not happen. And now that I love myself, that I know I have vices and I try to change them, well, I know that in the fourth step, I knew that when I was taking the moral inventory of myself, I could see that some of the vices are there and they are staying here because they spur me to keep on developing in order to be able to help others and also help those who suffer. And I have prepared many other examples for today, but I know that this is the Holy Spirit who is working here, because I'm speaking about my sin, about my illness, but I know that this is the grace. I prepared many other examples, but I'm speaking now about something else. But I know that this is not happening because of me. Then we also turn to God to remove all of the defects of character. Then I should humbly ask God to remove all of my shortcomings. Go to other people to also help them, but also say sorry. And then I continue to take personal inventory, and when I am wrong, to promptly admit it, so that I admit it, so that it doesn't grow in me. And then step 11, this is also the summary. So through prayer and meditation, we improve our conscious contact with God and as we understand God. So praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And then we also go out to other people. This is a spiritual experience as the result of these steps. So we try to take this message to others and to practice these principles in our lives. So I don't know what would have happened if I did not fall to my knees and say, God, help me, God, save me. I don't know if I wouldn't have been the person, the homeless person that Sister Emanuela met in the underpass, but I did fall to my knees. I did bend my knees and I said, God, I don't want to live like this. I have had enough. And so what happens? Miracles take place. And we can see that it's just like in the church. In the church, we have 5% of miracles and the rest is hard work. And Sister Miriam is showing me to slowly finish, but love, trust, gratitude, everyday gratitude, and first of all, humility. Of course, I am proud and I have to work on it, but just like Faustina kept on mentioning and writing about humility, I know that I could talk for hours and I only have half an hour here. But to conclude, I would like to mention that last week I heard during a sermon a priest said something really beautiful. He said something about humility. Mother Teresa was serving in an orphanage. She went to a baker asking for bread for the orphans, for her children. So she stretched out her hand, and when the baker saw it, he spat in her hand, and she said to him, I am going to keep this gift for myself, but my children need bread. And how many times in our lives we give up, we get discouraged. But in this humility, it's like, okay, I have received what you had for me, but now I'm asking for my kids. Thank you very much.